Right, welcome back to the Talk Corner. My name is Auntie Jemima. We've just heard from my lovely friends and colleagues, Chito Ndlovu and Sid Wamboi. And right about now, I'd like to welcome on stage the professionals, the people who are at the forefront to making sure or to ensuring that our mental health is at check. These are people you call in the middle of the night when you're crying or when you're overly happy and you're trying to tell them this happened and I'm so happy. I did this and I'm so happy. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to stage my very good friend and the founder and CEO of My Afya Africa, Nancy Kihara. Karibu sana, Nancy. Wow, welcome. I'd also like to welcome to stage my very good friend, a counseling psychologist, and someone I really, really, really treasure and keep close to my life, Joy Kehio. Karibu sana. You're welcome. Last but not least, my friends, I'd like to welcome to stage our gentleman, our very good friend, Kamau Mwangi, a psychologist. Asanteni sana, and thank you very much for coming through. I'd like to give you this chance to introduce yourselves and tell the audience who you are, what you do, and alafu tuendele. I'll start with you, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Auntie Jemima, for inviting us here. My name is Nancy Kihara. I am the CEO and founder of My Afya Africa. I'm a clinical psychologist by profession.
And for those people who don't know, what does My Afya Africa do?
My Afya Africa, we are a mental health organization. We are concerned about your mental wellness. We offer teletherapy services. We are so big on teen wellness. We do forums for them. We also carry out wellness programs for corporates and also teletherapy services for those who may need them. And we have our website, so you can visit us and read more about us. We also have a platform where we share our stories. So if you have your story on trauma and you want to share it, we are the people you go to.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. My name is Joy Kehio, as you mentioned. I am a counseling psychologist. I work predominantly with children, ages 0 to 14, 13. I also work with adults. And I also train children in life skills. Yes.
Thank you. Karibu sana, Joy.
My name is Kamau Mwangi. I'm a lecturer in psychology at Tangaza University, and I'm also part of My Afya Africa as the linkages officer and trainings. So that's what I do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you people, tukiwakosa binguni vile mmetuangalia, tutauliza Mungu mko wapi? Right, so we're going to go straight into our discussion today. We are demystifying childhood trauma, and I'm happy that we have Joy here who deals a lot with children. The first question, or the first thing that we want to know, we would like to know from you professionals, what is childhood trauma? And I'd like to start with you, Joy.
Well, Wangari, I would like to describe childhood trauma using 2 words. One, a distressing and disturbing experience that a child experiences or goes through that leaves them feeling vulnerable, unsafe, unsure, and progressively can develop other complexities because of what happened. Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from Dominic.
Right.
Or Kamau Mwangi.
Kamau Mwangi.
Yeah.
Either way, even Dominic works.
Yes.
So in addition to what Joy has mentioned, so I would describe as trauma as having 3 important characteristics. So there is the event itself, and then there is the experience, and then the effects of that experience. And so the event is prolonged. Take, for example, it could be prolonged. Yeah. It could be extreme, uncontrollable, and unpredictable. Yeah. So generally speaking, that's what a trauma could be for a child. And I think pretty much that. So as we describe, we'll see what that might mean.
Oh, yeah. All right. Nancy, what do you think, or what do you know trauma is, childhood trauma is?
Childhood trauma could be an actual or a threatening experience that occurs to a child. It could be an event, a set of events, a series of events that keep happening, or a set of circumstances which now impairs the ability of a child to be able to cope with all the things that they're experiencing at that point in time. Now, an event could be it is happening to themselves because of the person who is doing it to them, or exposed. For example, a trauma is experiencing something happening like war, or people who are always quarreling, dysfunctional families, and that now has that impression on their mind, and they're not sure which way to cope.
Right, and the other question I'd like to ask is you have listened to myself, Chito, and Sid talking about our experiences growing up. Is that part of childhood trauma? Ama ni kitu ingine inatusubua?
Thank you. Truly speaking, yes.
Wow.
I would, if they have had doubts,
Yeah.
yes.
Tuko sawa.
You're all good.
Yes.
I want to pick two situations
Yes.
from each of them.
Right.
Sid talked about, I just want to pick one of those situations for Sid. She spoke about her family situation,
Yes.
and then the violence, and then she spoke about the transition. So instead of addressing what was going on, that was taken away from her, and she went into boarding school. So having the gap, whatever happened between the experience, what was going on at home, and then being shipped away to boarding school, if I can use that word, then not processing what was actually going on in the family, that can create what we call a traumatized child, a space where a child feels traumatized.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Chito spoke about his situation,
Yes.
and the background, and specifically the loss, if it's okay for me to mention. When the loss happened at 8 years, something happened right there.
Yes.
And then there was a change, because he spoke about something changed at home. So if he was never able to process that, if the family just moved on and he was left at that point, I pick that as a space where trauma just took place. Other than the other things that followed that, but that was a space that he stopped.
Yeah.
Yes.
And before we give the mic to Kamau,
Yes.
he talked about losing his mom at a very young age.
Yes.
And what I have seen being carried forward is, or what I have seen with a lot of Kenyan families or Africans, is they don't allow, especially the elder siblings, to mourn.
Yes.
You're told you have to be strong for your siblings.
Yes.
You're told, apana wewe jikaushe, what are you showing your other siblings? How should that be handled? And I know we're going to have a different maybe conversation some other time around grief, but how do you think, or what is your advice to people or to guardians regarding children around grief?
Unfortunately, as you speak, I agree with you that caregivers in our society have little or no knowledge around how to help children during grief and mourning. They do not understand what has happened, and especially when the child, the child has lost a primary caregiver, who is a mother. Something serious has taken place in their life. And so what should happen, ideally, is that they should be allowed to go through the mourning process. They should get support from either a child counselor or a support system. Sometimes because of the cultural belief system and just the way society is and the family setups, a lot of people do not want to visit counselors or do not know that there is that provision to visit a counselor. So in that case, there should be somebody consistently checking on this child and helping them transition, crying, going through the thoughts, drawing with them, helping them process what really happened. And where did my mother go, and what will happen, and how will I live after this, so that they are able to move into adulthood with understanding. And I believe that is what did not take place at that point.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Joy. Kamau, I'd like you to address dysfunctional families, and why don't parents involve children when there is dysfunction? For example, let me talk about when two adults or when a couple disagrees and they decide it is time to call it quits. Why is it important to involve the child, to tell them, you know what, this has happened, Daddy and myself cannot do this thing again called marriage, or whichever language they're going to use? Why do you think, or let me rephrase it, should parents start involving children in major life decisions, like when a marriage comes to an end, do you need to involve your children?
Right. I'll go back a little bit, because brain is a very important resource.
Yes.
And if you don't understand how the brain works, then it becomes very difficult to understand the implication of how trauma works. So I'm just going to do a quick preview on that so that we can kind of now see how, and I'm going to be very simple. I know it's not technical, right? So this is how it works. So your brain grows for around 25, 26 years.
Yes.
Okay, and so this is important to understand, therefore, that when you are growing, your brain, like when you are born, your brain has all these neurons that are connecting from the information that is gathering from outside.
Yes.
Now, if I'm growing in an environment where it's very unpredictable, very uncontrolled, now the sensitive response kicks in, and it can kick in two ways. Either I get highly aroused, where I want to run away, flight, as we say it, or fight back. Yeah. But now I cannot fight with my parents. I cannot run away. So what the brain does, it does what you call dissociation. I dissociate, okay? I run into myself. I go into daydreaming. I go into, when I don't even know what is happening, I check out, basically, that's what we say. So I just check out, and the only way to deal with the person who is hurting me is to be compliant. So I heard them saying this, that one of the tendencies that they struggle with is to be overly kind. Because the only way you could deal with your highly demanding parents or dysfunctional family, you could not run away. True. You cannot fight back. Yeah. So the only way was to comply. We call that phoning. You comply. So there's something we call Stockholm syndrome, where captives are taken by their captivators. Yeah. One of the way of coping is by falling in love with them. Stockholm syndrome. So it's a phoning mechanism, so that you can be able to live with the person who is hurting you. But that now becomes a pattern of life. You know, you become a compliant person because you can't run away. And when you fall in love, and Love was mentioning this, and I was very, very impressed in his relationships. Yeah. He said that he kept attracting people who were treating him in the same manner his folks were treating him. And that's how the brain works. It knows that love comes with a certain amount of pain. And when someone loves you with that certain amount of pain that you experienced when you are young, you freak out. You say, like, what? This person is not loving me right. Wow. Do you understand? Yeah. So now, coming back to your question. Now, yes. when children are growing in dysfunctional families, yes. Now your brain needs that sense of predictability. Uh-huh. And we know in psychology, even when parents separate in friendly terms, it still affects the child. Because the brain is growing and it needs a sense of stability. And what you have done by separating is saying, my centers of stability, my places of reference are not stable. Even if it's a friendly, So even if you speak to your child, divorce and separation are still very, very strong on children, unless the parents staying together is worse on the children. So it can be helpful if there was extreme violence, take for example. So the separation can be good. But oftentimes, even when the separation happens, it can still affect the child. So I would say, in a word, that it will be important, maybe with the help of a therapist, to help the children to process what has happened to them. Yes. Yeah.
All right. Nancy, I want you to talk about, I would want to know, I know you deal with also adults. Do you also deal with children? Are our children able to pick up when something is wrong with mom, or are they able to know that dad and mom are fighting? Because a lot of the times you'll hear people saying, I'm sticking around because of my children, where can I go? At that point, are you doing good to the child or are you damaging the child?
Thank you. Sometimes we assume that children do not read signs and understand them. And of course, they have lived with you, so they can tell when there's a time of stability and when that seems to not to exist. And there are times we think when you are fighting away from them, they cannot be able to tell. Sometimes they'll even pick one thing, and then over time they see a certain pattern that comes. And also what happens is that one of the parent who is always in the children's life and space will tend to project whatever it is that they are going through to them without realizing that they are harming them. So sometimes you want to protect them, and the question you had asked Dominic was whether they should be involved. By the time a parent thinks of involving the children, the first thing you're thinking of how to work it out. So you're not thinking because you want to protect that space even for them. So the first thing is you're working it out, and sometimes it could be all of you are getting it all wrong because everybody is holding to their position. And eventually you end up not helping those children. You affect them because the things you're fighting about, they spill over through projection. Then you come and shout at them. You're angry at them. You try to or impress the other person's image on your children. And that way the children, yes, they pick those vibrations. They pick the vibes that are happening in that space. But remember, you are an authority to them. They will not ask. All right.
Kamau, there's something you mentioned about when Chito talked about his relationship, is that he fell in love, he would fall in love with people who are just giving him what he was used to. Is it also the same case? Because I have had a lot of time, it's a cliche thing, people saying when you're looking for love, you're looking for someone like your father. Women and men look for their moms in girls. Is it a problem? Number one. I have also seen or experienced or read about people who have fallen in love with abusive parents, abusive partners, because they grew up thinking that that is love. Is it the same thing?
So your opposite gender parent provides a sort of a template for you, okay? So it provides a sort of, and that's why today there is the importance of father figures. It's so important. It is so important that if you go to like a juvenile prison, you can make a wild guess, and you'll be right that 60% to 70% of the prisoners there, one thing they will have in common is either a lack of a father or the absence of a good father. All right, good relationship. Yeah. And if you go to teenagers, girls who tend to have sexual activities early in teenage pregnancy, one of the biggest things you're going to find is not contraceptives, is the role of the father, the relationship, the primary relationship they have with a father or a father figure. So that's very, very, very central. So, so it provides a template. Now, number two, there is something we call attachment, so secure attachment. So if you have a secure attachment to your primary caregiver, whoever it is, then that becomes also a template in the manner in which you interact with other people. So if your parents avoided responding with love and with care, especially those two, and they were not consistent, you can have what you call an anxious attachment. And when you go into a relationship with another person, you're always anxious this relationship will break, because your parents sometimes would respond to your physical and emotional needs inconsistently. Now as an adult, you have transferred that relationship to other people and even to God. Like you always wonder, will he respond this time round? When you're in a relationship, is it about to end? You know, is there something about to go wrong? If your parents completely avoided being affectionate towards you, have what you call an avoidant personality. And what you do is you completely have, one of the things that these personalities hate is to be dependent on someone. They do not like feeling that they need someone in their life. So they, in fact, push people away. Okay, so that is a tendency that comes from this, from growing up, and the type of attachment that you have. It affects not only your relationship, romantic relationship, but also friendship and your religious life, I would say. Yeah.
I'd like to talk to Joy. Firstborns. Yeah. Why is childhood trauma more common amongst firstborns? And I'll talk also about amongst firstborns who grew up 80s, 90s, because right now I think the conversation is shifting.
It is.
But I'd like you to address that. Let us know why it is more common amongst firstborns.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, you have mentioned that the conversation is changing now.
Yes, it is.
And probably because we are enlightened.
Yes, we are.
There's a lot of information going around.
Intentionality.
And there are, yes, as we are doing now,
yes.
This is intentionality.
Yes.
And the mental health conversation is out and about.
Right.
Prior this, we have come from a very closed community, societies, cultures. We have had our own ways of dealing with things. Right. And in those ways, we have had structures that have not really accommodated for help in the level that at which we are giving it now. It has not accommodated. It has been centralized to work in a certain way. So when you're talking about 80s and 90s, our parents did not know it any other way. They came from these setups that had structured their thinking in a certain way only. Yeah. And you cannot think outside that. Religiously also, there was a lot of influence in a certain way. In fact, a lot of children who grew up in those setups, unless they got to discover God for themselves, have been very angry with God's matters and talks. Wow. Because God seemed like he sits on a high seat and all he does is bring trouble to people and children in families. So this is the kind of mindset we are talking about. So when we look at now firstborns, we are saying that they are growing up from, we are tracing back from this kind of families, where these parents have this way of thinking, where the parents do not allow for learning. They do not have information. They do not know things any other way. And what they know is what they came with into the marriage.
Yes.
They are also very disgruntled about themselves. They have issues that they are bringing from where they were parented. So they don't raise their children any other way. That's the, I would call it, that's a platform they are working from.
Yeah.
They don't have any other setup.
Yeah.
So if you have, I know we keep having this conversation from this point, if you have an angry father, okay,
Yeah.
and he is now a father, and that anger has stemmed from his father,
Yes.
because of the way he was brought up.
Yes.
He does not have any other. He works from that.
Yes.
What does the person? The same. Okay?
Yes.
So raising my child as a firstborn, I'm giving them only which and what I know. Yes.
So Nancy, I read something that said children spell love as time, right? In our society today, in our country today, if you're not waking up very early to go make a coin for yourself, you will not get anything. And a lot of us grew up, I'll speak for myself because my father was self-employed. He still is. So he'd wake up very early in the morning, go to work, and then he'd come late in the evening, sometimes when we have gone to bed. And I know he was trying. He still is. I admire that man. But when it comes to giving your family time, how much time do children want? And what would you advise young parents who are coming up right now, young people who want to start families right now? Because if you're not there for your children, I saw two quotes actually. That one for time, children spell love as time, and there's one that I can't remember the wording. It said, when your child needs you and you're not there, there comes a time when you'll need them and they'll not be there. So how much is enough time for you as a parent to give your child? And I think first answer that.
So how much time is enough for you and your children as a parent? Now, this is going to be a very relative question because different parents are subjected to different kind of jobs that they need to feed for their families. Now, it is going to be a deliberate action, you as a unit, to figure out how it's going to work in a way that even your children understand that absence does not mean not caring, that absence means that that other parent is out there doing something. Now, this also means that the parent should not use this as an excuse to be absent when they should be present. Again, time should be quality time. So I can always be there, present. From it, you want me to be home at 5? I will be home at 5. But we have no engagement. We have no conversation to have because, you have those cultural settings where dad walks home and everybody's campus for safety. So it is about making sure and deliberate about this, that you as a parent, you understand first the role of parenting. Presence, that your child are going to emulate you, they are going to copy from you. Most of the things that they are going to do later in life, as you have seen our previous friends talk about, they are going to learn from this particular setup. How they're also going even to have the relationship they'll have, intimate relationships. They are likely to carry on what they saw at home. So you as a parent, it has to be very deliberate for you to know that this child needs your time, quality time. There are parents who actually make it like, I block my weekends. This is time for my family. Even if you call me, I won't come, but if you want me to come, I can come with my children. There are other parents who are like, Nina Wataftia. I mean, I'm out there fending for you, so please don't expect me to be here. So these children, the relationship patterns to them, they are affected because there are those who will admire, I like that your dad is always with you. Mine is never there. Then when you come and tell your dad, what do they tell you? Do you want to go to that family? So see what we have done to that child. Of course, they're not going to move. As Dominic said, they're going to have conditioned compliance. They'll be here. But the day they will leave, you'll be looking for them. And they'll be like, yeah, it's my time. That time when I needed you, you are not there. So they're unwell. They need you to be there just to feel the sense of family that you never got the time to do it. So what we need to realize that we can claim to be looking for money, but a time comes that we also need to ask ourselves, the people who we say that we love, how much time, quality time, are we giving them? This is a deliberate, conscious decision that one has to make.
Kamau, you have spoken about the brain maturing until you're 25, 26 years. And what we had picked, what I had picked from the audience in my last conversation on YouTube is that we had a case of a lot of children raising children. So are you trying to tell us that before 26, you have no business bringing a child into this life? And psychologically, what is the right age for a human being, a normal functioning human being, to start thinking about bringing another life into this world, or now start, dating or bringing now someone else into your life? What's the right age? Is there a right age? Yeah.
So again, complicated question, but one, because it's difficult to have a universal rule for every single individual. There's always the exception to the rule.
Yes.
But if you are to follow the pattern of brain development, so the thinking part of your brain,
Yes.
this part of you here,
Yes.
is the one that develops last. So what starts is the brain stem and what you call the limbic system, the emotional center.
Yes.
And one of the things that you'll observe, especially with teenagers, is the manner in which they tend to approach life is they tend to approach it from a pleasure principle. They tend to be quite moody and to swing from very positive moods to very negative moods because their brain does not have the capacity to process, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? It doesn't have the software, literally. And sometimes when I'm speaking to parents and I tell them, when you're angry with your teenager and you tell your teenager, "Wewe hauna akili," you are literally right. Hana, like, really. They doesn't have, okay?
Wow.
So, and that's something so important to understand.
Yes.
And especially for girls, the tendency for the differences between boys and girls in terms of anxiety and depression is massive, especially after a menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
The menstrual cycle is enough to set off a teenage girl into depression. So there are huge differences.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's also I would say the trauma works. There's something Lovu mentioned.
Yeah.
I think that I hope that's I pronounced that properly. He would mention how you'd be triggered by certain words.
Yes.
Because your brain first of all stores emotional memories, and when you experience a provocative event, it switches off your thinking part of the brain. So if take for example, when your father was beating you up, he was drunk. Okay?
Yes.
And then one day, someone approaches you as an adult and they're smelling of alcohol. Your brain remembers the smell of alcohol and you
Trigger.
become aggressive to this person. What do you
Yeah.
want to do to me?
Yeah.
Okay, before even the brain can interpret, no, this is not your father.
Yeah.
The brain already picks, this person is smelling like my dad, and therefore there's something wrong. And you're why am I angry with this person for being drunk?
Yeah.
You can't even process that.
Yeah.
So, sometimes I go all these places, but what I'm trying to
It's
point
okay.
out in relation to your question is this: because of the time that our brain takes to mature,
Yes.
and around 25 years, there's a friend of mine. I forget. He appears on Citizen a lot to speak about relationships.
Yes. Zulu?
Zulu, yes.
Yes.
Benjamin Zulu. He always mentions about the importance of not marrying before 25 years.
Yes.
And he is matching that with the brain development.
Yeah.
That, the person you like at 21 may not be the person you like at 30 years.
Guy.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Because your personality is going to be different. You'll have matured.
Yes.
So you might be attracted by someone at 22, and as your brain matures and as you experience and experience increases,
Yes.
you're like, what am I doing with this idiot? What was I thinking?
Yeah.
So, and that's why it's important, I would say, at least
Yes.
after 25 years. If you ask many psychologists, the idea of 18 years of the year of maturity is
No.
completely bogus.
Yeah. Thank you, Kamau. So if you're 25 and below, you still have time. No rush. Joy, I'd like to talk about or ask a question. Is childhood trauma only inflicted to children by parents only, or can it also be inflicted by other parties?
Well, no.
Okay.
It is not inflicted by parents only.
Right.
When we talk about caregivers, we are saying that there's a primary caregiver, of course, that
Yes.
it could be a guardian because the parent who has born this child is not present.
Yes.
But we are talking about people who come into contact
Mm-hmm.
at a daily basis.
Yes.
For example, people who we call our house managers today,
Yes.
they do a lot of damage too in the lives of children
Yeah.
because they are playing a role that
Yes.
they don't have capacity for. So they can be a reason why a child is very traumatized.
Oh no.
We have teachers,
Uh-huh.
okay?
Yes.
And we have history. We have had so many
Oh,
stories
yeah.
around teachers and children.
There are actually people who work hard to prove their teachers wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there are countless people who do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We also have setups where people have said siblings, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters.
Brothers and sisters. Something happened.
Cousins also.
Yeah. Cousins.
Gather. Where is safe?
In fact, let me be honest and say this.
Yes.
And to my viewers who would have experienced this, some of the situations that first sexual experiences children had have come from relatives, cousins who came to stay at home. Okay? Produce this big monster at night to a child.
Guy.
Don't guy. But,
God.
you know,
Yes.
we are saying that
Yes.
it is not just
Parents.
parents.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a whole fraternity of people.
Yes.
And they are here, not there, but there are many people who play this role without their knowledge that they are actually traumatizing children.
Yes.
But they do this.
They do.
Yes.
All right. Nancy, now that she has mentioned domestic managers, today's woman is an empowered woman. The woman is working and she's out. I think the common or the minimum is 3 months maternity leave. Then after that you go back to work. What is the best way now? Because you have to work. You have to get money to raise this child, and you're leaving her or him with your domestic manager, the one you have called agencies or you've called your friends, oh, I need this and that and that. What do you check out for in your child every day when you come home from work? What are the signs, or what should you do as a parent so that for you to observe if there is anything wrong and if there is anything right going on?
Now, what you need to observe for depends with also the age of the child at that time. And if you have a very young child, so basically that's this, you means to be very emotionally, psychologically, physically present as much as you come home tired, for you to have time for your child and do your examination and everything else. Sometimes you even try to befriend the same house manager so that they do good for you, but always know that this is your child. And try and protect your child. So do what you can. Sometimes you put God, in all these situations that things will run the way they are. Again, we have developed, and there is always a third eye that can see what cannot be seen. Also have good relationship with your neighbors. Yeah. They'll tell you something. Now, if a child is school going, or let's say a young toddler, always listen to them. There's something Chito said about when he gets home, he asks the child about the highlight of the day. Yeah. So if you're having a conversation with a child, do not be the one leading. Leave room for them to be able to express to you how their day was. Listen with the right frequency. If you ask a question, be ready to listen. Do not ask a question ready to respond, or when you're in the middle of something else, you'll shut them off. They'll just think you're not interested. So the moment you think you sit with your child, the right frequency, understand your child. Because you're the only person who knows them better than everybody else. You will even notice something if they start fidgeting, if they start the things they're omitting, in their conversation, then somehow you will know. And your questions, do not ask the why questions. They'll be off. Ask the what. What happened? When did it? Da-da. But when you start the why, they feel like you're already judging them. If these schools are school going, there could be a problem now in performance. Even the report from the teachers, the child has become withdrawn, he's aggressive to other children. They can actually even reenact what they have seen happening to them in a play. A teacher will observe and see, that kind of interaction does not look okay, and they will tell it to you. And the first thing, don't go saying that my child can't do that. Have a session now with your child and try to understand things, as I've said, with the right frequency, and have the time to listen, to understand. Don't be the first person to protect, to defend. There could be something is being communicated. If this person is an adolescent, they may start being in bad behavior. So a child who was always good, and then all of a sudden you're seeing they have destructive behavior, they have started taking alcohol, you heard they were seen with other people, they're not where you expect them to be when they should be, then again, try to understand what is happening. So the first thing, do not stigmatize your children.